Jim's dying to get in on this one.
Yeah, just a quick thing. So about 2 years ago, we were looking at this very question, electronic media versus paper, and trying to figure it out, what the real numbers were. And I wrote to a scientist at Harvard University in Cambridge, but not the real one. And he wrote back and he said something very simple, which is almost axiomatic. He said, it's always more efficient to send an electron than an atom. No physicist here? Sorry. An electron's about a millionth the size of a total atom, the weight of it. And if you're just sending the electrons, obviously, it's going to be far, far more resource efficient to do that. That said, there are great uses of paper, but we don't need to get into that debate, perhaps.
The issue is, of course, the issue is not just the sending of it, it's what you do with it.
Right.
And the sending is just the transport. It's all the other processes around it that you have to investigate.
His point is whatever you're doing with electrons, whatever you're doing with paper, the comparison in resource use for that is almost immeasurable.
But I'm an atom. So I like to touch atoms and read them, as well as transmit electrons and do all the other things. And I think that's the difference. It's not just a question of the transport system, it's a question of what we do with it. And there was the UK Publishers Association have done quite a lot of research, and none of this you can say is absolutely accurate because it all depends on your sources. But for example, reading a magazine, people read a magazine for a period of time. People share magazines, actually. Statistics show, I think, 1.7 people read a magazine. After a period of time, about 20 minutes, it's more efficient from a resource point of view to have a magazine in hard copy than it would be to be just downloading all the time and browsing on a screen. About 20 minutes. I don't stake my life on that, but it just shows that it's complex.
I think also what the argument misses is that you require resources to move that electron in the first place, and that's entirely missing from that argument.
Yeah, well, he did a lot more research, and the total electronics industry uses something like 3 or 4% of all electricity, whereas everything that's needed for paper is far beyond that, especially when you move from just electricity use to all the other resources that have to go into it. So, not that there aren't problems, of course, with electronics. Although I will say, I don't know if you noticed, you are the highest rated electronics.
I am aware of that. And it's a lot of hard work
from Greenpeace.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Excellent.
So we try. This is an interesting debate, especially as I talk to people who buy our computers. They're looking for places where there's cheap power to put their data centers, as are we, by the way, because they're consuming so much power. So you're right that it's only 3 or 4% today, but it's growing at a very rapid rate. And there's a whole bunch of cradle to grave things. The electron, by the way, I'd love it if everybody shipped electrons directly to your house and you print everything in your home. I love that idea. So let me know when we get to that point. But there's still things that people print. In fact, we did a little bit of research for companies who are looking at doing this bill thing, sending it to their homes, and how many people actually then printed the document. Well, the company that sends you that bill, they don't care if you print or not, because it's not their dime that you're printing with. And by the way, again, we're okay if you send electrons and print at home, but I didn't say that before. But actually about 25 to 30% of the people still print. So then you have to ask yourself the question, environmentally, are we better off to print centrally, send through the mail, or print locally at home? And it's a more complicated thing than I think we all understand. It's use model changes that will happen over the course of time.
But I've heard that as people get more and more used to using these electronic things, they are printing less.
They will print,
Is that right?
They will consume less printed material.
Consume less printed material.
So you have to balance what came in your mailbox versus what you printed at home.
Right.
Most people will still print at least 1 or 2 pages of a bill when they pay the bill. They want to write paid on it. They want to do, and this permanent record lasts for a long time. I can put it in a file and keep it. My mom will always have a piece of paper, right? Now, and that's some of that's generational. My kids, on the other hand, who are in their 20s, much less so. but there's still print, and it will still occur. I think what we're going through is this evolution of use models, and how customers want to use paper, how they want to use electronic, and moving in between those two, electronic and paper mediums, is changing extremely fast right now. So we don't have the answer for that use model. I think the question is, how much do we let the environment and the environmental messages sway that and stop a natural thing from occurring or not occurring? So anyway, sorry.
Great. Marco.
Just a point, I'm with Martin on this one. We have a study by Peter Aanvak, a doctor from Lund University, comparing the use of electronics and paper. And I think it's way more complicated than Jim says. The average e-reader requires 25 books to be read. The average European reads 2.5 a year. So for the average European, reading books on an e-reader is the wrong thing to do. So there's all kinds of nuances on all kinds of different products. And it's indeed in changing use. We have a youth panel tomorrow in Paper Week where we've asked lots of young people what they think. And they're actually quite positive about paper, especially for love letters, postcards, etc. And postcards electronically, besides slurping up a lot of coal-based energy, don't do anything to them emotionally. So please bring the nuance in. And that's what my problem is with these footnotes. Sorry for taking the stage, but the footnotes on the email. I once got such an email saying don't print from a very well-known consultant working for our sector starting with P, ending with C, from the UK. No names mentioned, who says don't print this. And I sent an email back with the tagline, don't use consultants, they fly too much, they have lease cars and they pollute the environment. It took me 10 seconds for a very nasty email to say it was insulting. It took me 10 seconds to send an email back saying you're equally insulting with your email message saying don't print. And we settled on a SAPI tagline, and that's what I would like to call here. Tell your customers indeed as well. We say, if you print paper, recycle it, which is a much nicer environmental tagline, which our companies are using. So fight the war with a bit of war back and put the right taglines there. And if you want to tagline consultants, feel free. That was not my call, but get the nuance in the debate. I think that's very important.
Yeah.
It's probably a good time to mention. I mean, we launched the results of our research last week, where we interviewed 5,000 consumers in Europe and the US, 10 countries, and we wanted to try and find out what people were thinking about their relationship with paper as well as sustainability of the industry. And I'll just give you just 2 or 3 very, I thought, surprising statistics. 83% of all respondents in Europe believe that 83% of 18 to 24-year-olds preferred reading off paper than reading off a screen. The overall result was 80% for the general population, but it was even higher for 18 to 24-year-olds. 78% of 18 to 24-year-olds believe paper was more pleasant to handle and touch than electronic media. 74% overall, and 63% of 18 to 24-year-olds, compared with 58% overall, preferred to keep important documents on paper. We were surprised, and I think it hugely encouraged that there is still an affinity. And I think there's a belief that having sort of it's not experiment. That's wrong. That's the wrong word. Having adopted electronic media, fantastic. Freedom of information that gives us in terms of portability, I think people are actually beginning to reappreciate, particularly for business to business, for advertising, for magazines, for all sorts of purposes, that paper is a very effective human material. And I think I think maybe it will see, as somebody said at the conference last week, paper may be the new cool.
The new cool, exactly.